I had nightmares, terrible, terrible nightmares, reliving that night. And, could I have done something different? The RPG coming at me. And then Neil Roberts would be sitting about that far away from me in the nightmare. I could tell that he was saying, "Why did you leave me?" So the only way to get past that was alcohol. And I had to do it to the point where I went to sleep. So it was a lot of whiskey. There was a point where I knew that wasn't right. You can't put the nightmares away with alcohol. Yeah, I was married 26 years to her, and she gave it her best. She came from a rough childhood. There was a whole background to this. But, the alcohol and the drug, the big thing I want to emphasize to your listeners is that you don't have to handle it alone. Whether it's somebody's drug and alcohol problem or, somebody's PTSD or suicide, look at the veteran suicide rate, especially with the soft guys, right? If you got a problem, find somebody to talk to. Somebody that can relate is what I would suggest. Somebody who can't relate may just be like, hey, pull your bootstraps up. But somebody who may have already been there, or knows what you're going through can be helpful, And the interesting thing, so I want to go way back to Anaconda, right? And this is reference to getting help. So remember I said I was rescued, came back on the KIA bird next to Neil Roberts. Well, I was back in the States, that week, and I had nightmares, terrible, terrible nightmares, reliving that night. And, could I have done something different? The RPG coming at me, and then Neil Roberts would be sitting about that far away from me in his kit with the damage that was done to him, just looking at me. And I could tell in the nightmare, I could tell that he was saying, "Why did you leave me? I'm dead. Why did you leave me?" So the only way to get past that was alcohol for me, right? So I was, Jack Daniel's, Jim Beam, Maker's Mark, I love bourbon. And I had to do it to the point where I went to sleep. So it was a lot of whiskey. And there was a point where I knew that wasn't right. You can't put the nightmares away with alcohol. So I went to the shrink, the regimental psychologist, and I told him everything. And I said, "Can you look at my assessment records, my psychological profile, and tell me if I did what you guys predicted? Am I what you want in a Nightstalker?" And he looks at it. He's like, "Well, this is an old test. We don't really use this one anymore. And it doesn't really select people. It's more like an elimination tool. Like if you, have a certain set of behaviors or thoughts that we don't want, we just won't take you. But they aren't necessarily, oh, this guy's the right mindset, we'll take him." But what he did say is that there's a series of data points, right? And so think of these columns. It's like, integrity, here, honesty, here, bravery, here, stupidity, here, whatever, how you prioritize things. And they categorized it, right? And I'm butchering this, but you get the idea. There's different character traits. And he says, "You have the classic Nightstalker checkmark." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "When you connect, like the first 4 dots, there's like this high one, a low one, and then you go high again, you stay high. Like if you draw a line between them, it's a check mark." He said that's the what they found is you don't care about the rules when someone's life is on the line. So, for example, what they found is that people that are in aircraft emergencies, like Sully, right? Miracle on the Hudson, this is the great example of it. They wanted him to turn in and go toward an airfield. They kept giving him headings to Teterboro, to LaGuardia, and he's like, "Not happening. I'm going in the river." And they try to talk him out of it. But he knows, and he just does it, right? And so in military aircraft situations, same thing. You can pull the guts out of the engines and tear it up and save the aircraft, but destroy the aircraft, but save the occupants. If you're this checkmark kind of guy, Then we still had a couple of Nightstalkers that had most of the check mark, but that low point, and I can't remember what the category was, but it was like basically concern for getting in trouble, was more up here. And we had a guy, for example, in an MH60, he got on a brownout landing. There's what we call bitch and Betty is the voice warning system. And she bitches at you if you're, too low or too much power or low rotor. And this guy was in a dust cloud in a Black Hawk, and he starts pulling power to get out of it. And he's surrounded by trees. And bitch and Betty says, low rotor, low rotor, low rotor. And he jams the power down, and he has a hard landing, and the aircraft is severely damaged. So they go back to the black box, and they look at it, and they find out bitch and Betty was wrong. The rotor was fine. But because he was worried about getting in trouble for, maybe drooping the rotor and settling with power, he purposely put it down in a situation where he wasn't ready to do. And they said, that's the difference between the two. It's not that, there's nothing wrong with that kind of guy. It's just that's who you are. And, when it came time to get Roberts, with no miniguns and all that stuff, I turned back in, and we're gonna go get him. It wasn't until I knew it was useless. It was untenable. I mean, we could conceivably crash on top, and in my dreams, at least he doesn't die alone. But we all die. The rest of the SEALs die. My crew dies. So I made a choice. One guy, we're going to go over here. Razor 04 might be able to get him. But in doing that, he kind of reinforced that I was normal. These dreams, they're normal for somebody who experienced what you experienced. And I said, listen, I got to tell you, the guys across the street, the other pilots, they're in just as bad a shape, and they won't come here. I mean, I'm just at the point where I'm drinking myself to sleep. I don't know if they are, but I know they're all emotionally messed up from that whole thing. I said, you got to make it mandatory. And so he said, I can't do that. So I went to the company commander, I told him the whole situation. And I said, sir, you can make it mandatory. So he made it mandatory for everybody to go take their turn with a psychologist, and minimum 30 minutes. And to keep things going, they could go for an hour. Everybody stayed the full time, the whole hour, and many of them came back. And they told me, a week or two later, hey, thanks for doing that. I was mad at you for doing it, but it helped.
Man, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you, man.
So once again, it's that whole, you got to ask for help. Knowing when to ask for help, I guess, is the issue, right? Because you can't have everybody, I'm stressed, I need help.
Yeah.
We're all under stress, so there's some, some subjectivity to that, I guess. But you got to know when that is, and it needs to be available. So when you do decide you want help,
you
do it, and you can't have the stigma of, oh crap, Al went and talked to the shrink, but I knew they were all messed up too.
Good for you, man.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.